Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to talk about nutrition. My name's Rodney.
Hey, and I'm Keith, and this is the More in Common Daily Chronicle, where we just chronicle our days as we look to build the things that we're building, get where we want to go, which I don't even know if we know where that is, but really just chronicling the journey for our girls, for ourselves to look back upon, and to build community for anybody else on that same journey that wants to take part in that same process. So yeah, nutrition. Let's talk about nutrition.
Daily nutrition.
It doesn't encompass managing my hair each and every one of these, but
you know why I wear a hat? That's the main reason. It's 1 and 2 with Super Bowl / I don't feel like doing my hair this early in the morning.
Yeah. Clearly I don't. So nutrition.
Yeah. So we both have very different takes on nutrition, but it's very important to both of us.
Yes.
I would say it's key to getting
How do you look at nutrition? Done. Like, as and this kind of in line with the whole self-care conversation we've had. How do you look at nutrition? Like, and it's fitting it into your priorities and all of those things, because doing all this stuff, nutrition's easy to. As I hijack this, I have I'll call him maybe a mentor, but he recently, a year ago, and he's in his 50s now, decided, I am going to live this life that I'm preaching, and he started working out and eating well, where he worked from home and still ate fast food 4 times a week, right? So
really,
yeah, like, it's not easy for a lot of people who are either traveling a lot, or I think that's probably the hardest thing. How do you manage it, and how do you think about
it? So it has been a lot of work. Right now, it's just pretty much, it's just part of my day. It's almost like getting up and making tea, or getting up and doing this call with you now. It's just a normal thing. My personal, what I do for nutrition changes. Varies on how I feel, what I'm trying to accomplish, but I would
How
say,
often does it change?
High level, it's very important. It's just something that I think about every day. Like when I'm eating, like, do I need to eat this? Do I want to eat this? What's going on? How often does it change? I mean, I would kind of say daily, because some days I fast all day. Some days I fast part of the day. Some days I eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like, it really is very dynamic depending on how I feel and what I feel I need. Some days I don't eat any carbs. Some days I eat lots of carbs. Like,
how have you attuned your body or your mind to understand what you need on any given day?
I think self-experimenting so much. Like, I've done keto, I've done paleo, I've done if it fits your macro, kind of just eating like as many carbs and like measuring my food, and I've just done all those things, seeing how my body responds, whether eating too much bread or rice made me break out, or how do I respond to dairy, and like, I found that, for instance, that I tend to operate better on a higher fat, lower carb diet, except for when I'm training really heavily. We'll talk about working out another day. But when I'm training really hard and I need to increase the carbs, but then the kind of carbs matters. Like, sweet potato, good for me. Rice and bread, not so good for me. But it's very different for you.
Yeah.
From what works. So that's how I look at it. And that's how I got in tune with it, is just trying things. And then feeling what worked and what didn't, instead of just saying, well, this worked for him and he's shredded. Why isn't it shredding me?
Yeah.
What about you? Like, how do you think about it on a I guess global meta level? And then
on the good old meta level, like, I think it's important, and I think about it all the time, right? And that's kind of part of the muscle that's been created, is it's this constant thought. I'm with you. Like, do I need to eat this? Don't I need to eat this? Can I get away with it? How am I going to feel about it? I always feel food guilt afterwards, which is maybe a conversation for another day on this.
Oh, we should talk about that, though, because I've changed my thoughts on that.
Yeah, but it's just one of those. Where do I and I like consistency in my diet. Like it works better for me. So, we've talked about my meal prep. Just staying consistent, not drinking
How many
a lot,
days a week do you eat the same
water.
thing, or how many meals a week, I guess?
It's tough because, to your point, there are days. So generally speaking, I eat the same breakfast every day unless we go to a restaurant, and then it's a variation of that breakfast. It's 3 eggs and an English muffin with peanut butter on it.
The whole egg, or just egg white, or
the whole egg? Yeah, the whole egg. A lot of nutrients in the yolk.
Sure.
And
I'm a fan of the yolk.
If we go out, I'll have an omelet with some toast and some fruit, maybe a little heavier. Or if I'm traveling, I might have a heavier breakfast because I know I won't be able to eat again at 10 o'clock, where I have my second meal, which is usually chicken, vegetables, and a carb, which is also the same meal around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then whatever we're having for dinner, I try to mix it up. But
it's really carb. What kind of carb? Sorry.
It's usually a starchy carb. Because obviously there are carbs and vegetables, but rice or potato or pasta, whatever it might be.
Complex carbohydrate.
A complex carb. But I don't eat a lot of it. It's a macro measurement, right? I mean, I don't really measure it all that much. I just eyeball it.
Did you ever measure it?
I did when I first started on this, but what I've realized is I can process. I don't need to measure it. Because I get really hungry, and I don't like to be hungry, right? So, but I also have noticed through this, I can take more of a variance from the diet. I'm not trying to be a bodybuilder. I'm not trying to get down to 5% body fat because I just don't want that discipline. And I think that's another part of what nutrition is for me. I like food, right? I like to eat
Understanding your goals and what your relationship with food is.
100%, right? And just being able to say, okay, I know 80% of the time I'm going to eat the way I need to eat, and I might not feel great after the other 20% of the time, but I'm not hungry and I enjoy eating those things, like French fries every so often. Don't eat them that often, or whatever it might be.
On that, real quick,
understanding where I can vary.
Just a quick note back to the food guilt thing. I was listening to a podcast a couple years ago, and somebody was talking about cheat days, and I used to do a cheat day on the weekend, and he was like, well, we don't celebrate cheating in culture generally. And the psychological response of I just ate that, it was my cheat day, I had the donut, even though it tasted good, is shame or guilt or whatever. Right. And he's like, the physiological response is no good for you, versus if you were just I'm going to enjoy this treat that I've decided that I want, just enjoy it. And I've flipped on that, and so when I eat something that I want, it's just I want it. It's cool.
And I've flipped
I'm not
on
an Olympic athlete
as well. For when I'm eating it, it's after I've eaten it where I don't feel great. Maybe it's French fries, so it's higher fat. I don't do well with higher fat, right?
That's right.
Really sluggish.
Higher carb.
Keto diets are awful for me. I can't stand them. I feel awful all day long, and I've tried it. And it's not an adjustment I care to make. Higher, more complex carbs. If I eat a full plate of pasta, which I used to eat a pound of pasta once a week, right?
It was sickening.
I don't know how I did it. I can't do that anymore. It just slows me down. Dairy is actually something I don't do a lot of because I think I have a sensitivity to it. So it'll cause me to feel a little bit more sluggish. So, if I have leaner foods, lower my carb intake, eat a lot of vegetables, eat fruits, it's kind of a standard thing. My energy level is just more sustained throughout the day, and I feel better.
So you don't necessarily just feel bad, you're down on yourself, but you actually have
physically
less energy.
Feel awful. Yeah. Which then
and I get that. After I eat a pint of ice cream, and
and that leads
I didn't sleep as well.
That leads to the psychological component of So try to not do a lot of that, where I know I can at least recover from it, right? When we were traveling, I ate, I think, 4 pieces of pizza when we had pizza one lunch, knowing what I knew where it would fit into my whole day. And I was able to recover from it faster than where I used to travel, and I wouldn't pay attention to anything I eat. And I would eat a whole bunch of food because it's free, right? And I like food. And then it would take me days to recover. Whereas now I pay attention to those treats, and then it takes me less time to recover.
the last thing for today, because I think we could talk more about this before we ask everybody else a question. What's your goal? Like, I think this is probably where we should have started. Like, what's your goal with your nutrition?
So it's interesting. The goal of my overall is just to be healthy. I like to eat healthy. It makes me feel better. But 2, I have a physical goal. I want to get down to 7% body fat. Now, I don't think I ever will, because I need a certain level of discipline. But it puts it at an extreme that just constantly keeps me focused on it, and constantly keeps me reducing my body fat and heading in a direction that I want to go. We talk about this, just the journey versus the win and loss of the goal. Like, if I get there, amazing. It might come a time, but I got to shift and make adjustments as I go to just make sure I'm continuing to make progress. And those are the 2 things I pay attention to. How about you?
Yeah, I used to have a 9% goal. I got rid of it. I think if I had one, it'd probably be 11 or 12 now. But that's not my goal. My goal is to remain metabolically flexible, so that I could eat carbs or fat or like whatever I want when I want, and still get the energy that I need, still feel good. And I think so. Metabolic flexibility, longevity. Like, I'm really trying to, from at least a Rodney health standpoint, be here as long as I can. So I want to eat in ways that are conducive to that most of the time. But I also enjoy food. So I want to enjoy food.
I want to enjoy food as well. That is another goal of my diet, my eating habits. Yeah. All right. So what's the question?
Question for the day is,
what's your dietary goal?
That's probably
what's your nutritional goal? I'm just curious. Like, what do you set out to do? Is it lose weight? Is it maintain? Is it whatever it is? There are a bunch of them, so no one is right. Deuces.